Well, it's that time of year. We're going to go through every single position group for the UCF Knights. For this one specifically, the one everybody wants to talk about, quarterback. Who do we think should be the starter for your 2025 Knights? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline provides the ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC. BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered in every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So like I said, new year, lot to get to. Haven't really got a chance to talk with Nick about a lot of these players that we're going to be discussing over the next couple weeks. But kind of wanted to run it by you guys. So we're going to be doing, we didn't really do it the first couple years. We kind of just, once spring ball came around, we would talk about certain guys we thought would make an impact. But with the influx of new guys and the new coaching staff, we're going to be going to 2 episodes a week, a lot quicker than the new season coming up. This is the first episode of a longer series. It's normal Charge On, but we're going to go through every position group and go through all of the players that we have signed and kind of give our takes on if they're going to start, if they're not going to start, if they should be more of a backup role. So we're starting with the quarterbacks. But Nick, it's been a little bit. That's more so my fault for my recording schedule, but It's been an interesting couple of weeks for UCF. How are you doing first? Say hello to the listeners. And what have you thought about? We're going to talk about a guy you haven't got a chance to talk about today, but what have you thought about this kind of early off season for the Knights and who they've added?
Well, I'm back. Let's just say that right now. I'm back. For all the newer listeners, and I mean within the last month, I'm also a co-host of this show. Yes, we've had some scheduling conflicts and whatnot over the past month, but my hiatus is over. It's back to reality. We got a long off season ahead of us, but yes, that off season began last month, and as you said, I haven't really been able to really chat a lot of these topics, and we're going to dive into the most important position group of them all tonight, obviously. But yeah, we're just over a month in now of the Scott Frost 2.0 era. Hard to believe that it's been over a month, Sean, since that day where we got the alert that Scott Frost is going to be the head coach of UCF. And he's been hitting the ground running in the transfer portal, and he's brought in a lot of guys. And I know that all the ranking sort of systems out there love what UCF has done. So hopefully that pans out by the time we get to ball. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hype myself necessarily over any of this stuff because I feel like we hyped ourselves last year over that transfer portal class, which was also highly rated, if I'm not mistaken, from all the ranking systems and everything for the transfer portal, and we saw how that turned out. So I'm not getting myself too high this year. I'm going to go in a little bit more cautious on everything, but there are some guys that I think have some potential to contribute not only for this year but also the years moving forward, and I'm excited that we're doing this exercise early so we can give our initial thoughts on some of these guys.
Yeah, I will say, with Gus and his staff, when he brought guys in, and we've said this before, Nick, where it was really a wait and see. Like, you could see what they did at their previous schools, and I guess it's true for any program around the country. You saw who they brought in and said, oh, that guy's going to make an impact. Like, you look at Penny Boone, you're like, okay, you got a 1-2-headed monster with RJ Harvey and Penny Boone. And then, like, you look at the season and it's like, what happened? I think with Scott Frost and staff, I think it's a little more of the same with that just because of the uncertainty. But at the same time, I think there's a lot more position groups we can look at and have a good idea of, like, okay, they view this guy as a plug-and-play starter, or they view this guy as a role coming off the bench type. And we'll kind of, you talk about exercise, we'll kind of go through that as we hit every position group. But I think starting with quarterbacks is good. You add 2 new guys, 2 guys that have already been on the roster, and we can kind of start I think me and you both have a good understanding of how this is going to go with quarterbacks, but I think it's really good to go through it. Should we start with Dylan Rizk? I think that's the most logical. There's a lot of discourse. There is a lot of discourse on this topic. Yeah, it is the polite thing to do. But I will say we'll get started. There has been a lot of discourse on social media about this topic. I think surprisingly, I think it is a little split between two certain guys, and we'll kind of talk through them. But let's start with Dylan Rizk. Obviously, he started the final 4 games of the season for UCF, had 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 904 yards passing, about 62% completion percentage. Listen, that Arizona game, I think, made everybody believe that he can be the guy. He showed flashes in that game. He was 20 of 25 for 294 and 3 touchdowns. He showed a lot that got people really excited. They were saying flashes of Mackenzie Milton, that he had the dog in him. But that final 3, Nick, was the one where you kind of questioned maybe the ceiling a little bit, maybe where Dylan Rizk can go. Now, I want to be very careful. He is young. It was not a good situation with Gus Malzahn. And before we'll give our for and against after we kind of talk about the player. But kind of give your overall thoughts on Dylan Rizk, the player, and kind of what you saw from him out of those final 4 at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you have to start with the Arizona game, clearly, because that's the first time we got a chance to really see Dylan Rizk in some extended action. And I think he was, 22 for 25 in that game with multiple touchdowns. He even had the big run over the middle that got everybody excited. The Hail Mary right before half to Randy Pittman Jr. Not R.I.P. Randy Pittman. R.I.P. to his UCF career, unfortunately. I'll put it like that. And yeah, he got the fan base really excited. Everybody was sort of like, hey, why was the 4th guy the best guy of them all? Why did it take so, but chaotic season it was, Sean. A very chaotic season it was. And I remember saying, we had the post-game show on the field, and I said, it probably is not, and it wasn't fair to probably Dylan Rizk to say this, but it's probably not ever going to be like that again. Like, if you were looking for like the ceiling of Dylan Rizk as a player, we saw it in the Arizona game. And that's not to diminish him as a player or his potential or anything like that. He just played like as almost perfect of a game as you could possibly play. And it happened to be in his first start against a really bad team. And then like going forward, now that teams had film on him, you were curious to see what was going to happen. And he went through some of those ups and downs and those ebbs and flows that you're expecting from a young guy getting a chance. And we know that it wasn't exactly the greatest situation those last few games under Gus. And you saw how the season ended against Utah, which was just a rough outing for the UCF offense. There's no doubt about it. And, I went into the offseason saying, okay, if Dylan stays, and that was the first thing he did, he announced that he was staying in about mid-December, I think it was. I'm okay with that, but I'm not just giving him the starting job. But I think he did some good things. I think he put some solid tape out there. I think he showed clearly that he's more than capable of being the 4th-string quarterback on this current UCF football team. And if there's somebody here that's left in this quarterback room of who's coming over that you're thinking of, hey, I can develop that guy and I can try to get more out of him, then you would probably put all your eggs into the Dylan Rizk basket that he'd be that guy. So that's sort of my initial thoughts of where we stand with Dylan right now. I'm not giving him the quarterback 1. I'm going to let him battle that out with some of these other guys that we're going to get to hear in a little bit. But I'm glad that we were able to see him play last year. I think that was really important for the future of the program, that we got a chance to see what Dylan could do. We saw that it wasn't like it was like some catastrophe of him having him back there. It wasn't like a disaster or anything. But all in all, like I said, I'm just glad we got to see that opportunity and we're able to even talk about him for a starting role in 2025, which last offseason, Dylan Rizk was not even on our radar. So that just shows you how things change.
No, it was E.J. Colson is the future of the program, and Dylan Rizk is most likely going to transfer out. We were talking early in the season, they threw him in there. I forget what game it was, but they threw him in there, and we're like, oh, they're getting him tape. They're getting him tape for when he ultimately enters the portal, and boy, do things change. Again, I think I'll give you my for and against Dylan Rizk. And we're going to give you our prediction at the end of the episode, which great.
It was the BYU game, by the way. I blocked the season out already. I had to go back and look. It was the BYU game that we got a chance to see him.
No, what was the game earlier in the season? It was the BYU game. He actually came in for 2, or was that the game where he came in? I know he came into the BYU game, but was there an earlier game in the season where he got?
I think it might have been Sam Houston.
Because BYU, he actually came in, and that's where we were all looking like, oh, mate, they have to play him next week. But I remember early in the season, there was a game, they threw him in there for a drive, and it was, oh, okay, he's getting tape for when he ultimately entered the portal. We'll make you guys wait until the end for our predictions, but here's my for and against. So for Dylan, my for is showed flashes, and there's no question he showed a lot of good flashes. And I think, again, young, you can mold him. This is Scott Frost. This is different. This is a new staff. I think that's helpful to get into a new staff. Familiarity with receivers and the running backs. I think that's crucial. Now, granted, they have a lot of new guys coming in, so that is a factor, just like every year in college football. But I think for Dylan to have that familiarity with a lot of the guys on the roster, and especially on the offense, I think that's huge. Again, he's still young and can take that next jump. And he could take that next jump with this coaching staff. My against is we don't know how high the ceiling is. We don't know how high the ceiling is with Dylan. I think you mentioned it. Arizona is probably where we're kind of viewing his ceiling. We might be wrong on that. But that is in my opinion, that is a P4 starter. I don't know where that would be, what kind of level of P4, but if he is a guy that goes 20, 25, 294, and 3 touchdowns, no picks, that gets you starting level minutes at the P4. It's just, is he going to be a guy that elevates your team? New staff didn't recruit him. That's a big one. That never stops the staff from starting a guy, but ultimately there is they want to start the guys that they kind of want. You've seen that in the transfer portal. We're going to get to 2 of the guys that they've kind of recruited to come over. I don't even know what I wrote for the last one. Got worse with each start. So if you kind of look at the games and watch the eye test, not just the stats, but Arizona was the best. Then you go to the next one, which was Arizona State. That was not as good. It wasn't good. West Virginia was really bad, and then Utah was really, really bad. So those are my for and against Dylan. What do you got for Mr. Rizk?
My against is, I think he had the benefit of, it was in a weird or an interesting situation last year, rather, that he actually was the longest tenured quarterback on the roster in the Gus Malzahn system. A year. Okay. And maybe there were some theories to that, like the other guys just did not pick it up or they didn't run it as effectively as they thought. And here comes Dylan, who clearly was learning a lot and had a chance to watch for at least a little bit and get to know the playbook. And then he came in and he looked like he knew the offense. He had a pretty good understanding. We were complimenting him a lot, where he seemed like he knew where he wanted to go with the football. He knew where it was designed to go ahead of time. And he seemed to play with some good confidence. I'm going to bring the word back, Sean, moxie. He had some moxie on some of these runs, a fearless runner, if you will. I wouldn't say the cleanest runner. I've certainly seen much cleaner runners wearing a UCF jersey, playing quarterback, and wearing a number 10 jersey, might I add, playing quarterback for UCF. So that's kind of one of my downs against him is if we are getting the Scott Frost offense that we think we're getting, does Dylan sort of slide right into fitting in that role? Because we know that offense requires, a lot out of your quarterback in the running game. And I don't know if you can get that consistently from Dylan. If you look at, obviously, Mackenzie Milton, he had a lot of success with his legs here at UCF when he played under Scott Frost. If you look at Adrian Martinez at Nebraska, he had a lot of success using his legs in a Scott Frost offense. I don't know if you get that element necessarily with Dylan. It seems like, especially nothing designed. It's always going to be sort of, on scrambles and stuff breaks down and he can take off. And again, he's willing to take on hits and stuff like that. And we give him plus points for that, but I'm not sure if he's like the most natural fit for the offense. But again, you probably wouldn't have said he was the most natural fit for the Gus offense. And it just turned out just because he could actually complete a pass, he became the best quarterback that they had on the roster. So that was sort of one of my questions for Dylan. And then the fact that it is a new offense, like you don't have that advantage that you had when you were with Gus. Maybe Scott comes in and now it's like a fresh, clean slate for everybody. Everybody's got to learn the offense together now. And so is Dylan going to be able to pick that up quickly? Is he going to be able to learn it? Is he going to be able to run it as effectively as some of these other guys? Because I would say of all these 4 quarterbacks, he's definitely like the outlier in terms of his sort of playing style. And so I'm curious to see how that meshes with what Scott wants to do.
It's definitely interesting. We'll talk about him more at the end when it comes to the starter. But Jacurri Brown, guy we all know maybe don't love as much as we should, but Jacurri Brown 30
should.
Listen. 35 of 67, 398 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 52.2% completion percentage. Started 2 games, played most of the Cincinnati game, which was his best game, with 13 of 20 for 207 and a touchdown. But against Iowa State and BYU, Iowa State, he went 8 of 20 for 2 interceptions and only 62 yards passing. And BYU went 8 of 17 for 2 interceptions and 96 yards passing. So, improvement from those games. Listen, he did rush for 53 carries for 401 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, here's the thing with Jacurri. I'm just going to go into the for and against because I think it tells the whole story. I think there is a reason. I'll start with my against. He can't throw the football more than 15 yards down the field accurately. That is a fact. Early in the year when we saw him kind of come in garbage time. Yeah, he's good with the intermediate 10 yards in. He's pretty accurate. I'll give him that. Like, he throws some bullets 10 yards in. The problem is he throws bullets past the 10-yard line too. Yeah, all the time. I think kind of with that, that's a big against. And also, I don't think it's hyperbole to think, Nick, and this is, again, an against for me, he wouldn't have been a Power 4 starter. If he would have transferred out, he would have been going to a G5, most likely, to get a starter role. Because I don't see a team in the P4 that was going to offer him a starter role. Here's my reasoning, though, for. He is lethal running the football. He's lethal. I mean, whenever he came in the game, he kind of has that other element at quarterback that you kind of have that confidence in, where he can pick up a couple yards on the ground. He is a Scott Frost quarterback type of QB. Scott Frost did recruit him when he was at Nebraska. In the Scott Frost system, you do need to have that element of throwing the football, obviously, which we've said he hadn't shown that he has, but it is something to note that Scott Frost had recruited him. And the games that he did perform really bad, which were the starter games, he did go up against 2 of the best defenses in the Big 12, and Iowa State and BYU. So I think that is something to note there. Obviously, against Iowa State, he ran all over them, which was really impressive. But kind of give your take on Jacurri Brown. I think it's a very interesting element. We'll talk again in total at the end, but I think he does bring an interesting element to the team heading into 2025.
I think he can have a role on the offense, but in terms of having the keys to the entire offense as quarterback 1, it doesn't do a lot for me. I don't know about you. I don't know about you watching.
I'm not trying to bury the lead here.
Does Jacurri Brown instill any sort of confidence into you? I don't mean to bury him or anything. He's going on this. We're not talking about a Dylan Rizk who's played 1 year. We're not talking about a Tayven Jackson when we get to him, who I guess you could say has played technically 2 years, in Indiana. Like, we're talking about a player right now that's going into year 4 and has been in multiple systems. And I don't even know if I want to say, like, we've seen flashes, because I really don't think we have. Like, we've seen great ability running the football. And that's why I say I think he can have a role in the offense. Like, I envision, like, hey, it's 3rd and 2, it's 3rd and 1, it's 4th and 2, it's 4th and 1. We want to put a guy back there, for like a specialized player, kind of how Gus used him at the end of the year, near like with some of those goal line packages that he was able to pick up a couple scores on. Like, I'm okay with that. But there's nothing that has suggested to me that he is ready still at this point in year 4 to be a necessary and capable enough passer at this level if you want to get to where you want to go as a football team. Like, that's just the hard truth to it from what I see from Jacurri Brown. I don't necessarily have him in my mix to be a starter. He's sort of like I said, I think you can have a role for him with his legs, but with his arm, I just simply have not seen enough. He played all right in that Cincinnati game, especially coming off of what we had seen with KJ Jefferson before him. He's sort of just what he was able to do with his legs. Again, that was able to ignite some things offensively. He had some electric moments against Iowa State in that game, but he threw for 62 yards. He scored 35 points, Sean. He threw for 62 yards. And in the following week against BYU, he threw for 96 yards. And they took his legs away in that game. Remember? He had 9 rushing yards in that game. He threw for 96 yards and two interceptions. So interceptions, not a lot of accuracy, 52% passer. Yeah, I don't think Jacurri Brown will be starting for UCF next year.
Nick goes, I don't want to bury the guy. Goes on a 3-minute tangent of burying him. But no, I agree. And listen, like I said, I want to talk more at the end, but I think the one thing we can both agree on is whoever the starter is, it doesn't matter because Jacurri Brown will be the other quarterback that gets snaps at some point. I think we can all agree on that. I think he is the most dynamic quarterback.
He has the most lively arm. I'll say that. He's definitely got the most lively arm probably of the 4 that we're talking about.
You can have a lively
today.
arm, but if you're not accurate with it doesn't matter.
There's just not enough touch. There's just quite frankly not enough touch there for
Zero
me.
touch.
And again,
he can throw a bullet though.
And again, this is a 4th-year guy, and I think we said that last year. Like, I don't know what. To me, he's not the future. He's just not.
No, but I do think I am excited to see him in the Scott Frost offense in whatever way they want to use him. Use him in the Bo Prabula role, Tayven Jackson role, technically. Bring him in for whatever plays you want to use him in the run game, or if you want to have him throw a pass, a quick out route or something like that. But no, I do agree, and we'll talk more at the end. But let's talk Cam Fancher. Cam Fancher, man. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I've been very critical of Cam Fancher, and I don't know him. FAU quarterback transfer, 126 of 212, threw for 1,528 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for the Owls last year. He played at Marshall from the last 3 years before that, I think. 2023 and 2022, definitely. In 2023...
3 years, yeah.
3 years. I only wrote stats down for the 2023 year because, and I'm going to keep it very simple. He is a good rusher. I want to make that very clear. This past season, 99 carries for 365 yards and 3 touchdowns. He definitely cleaned that up this year. He can run the football. But 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions this year. Last year, had a much better year, and I think this is why FAU kind of went after him when he was at Marshall. Threw for over 2,000 yards, 65% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So in 2 years, I don't do math very well, but that is 17 touchdowns, 17 interceptions throwing the football. My 4 for him, I have 1 for and 1 against. And I'm going to be honest, the against nixes him out. 4, most experience starting out of all the quarterbacks. He has the most experience out of all the quarterbacks on the roster. My against is he is a turnover machine. He is a turnover machine. In his college career, he has turned the ball over an insane number of times. So just for that reason alone, I think it is a good depth piece to bring into the room to fill out your quarterback room since you lost a lot of them. If that man sees the field, it's probably not going to be great. There's probably good flashes. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Cam Fancher can go out and get you a touchdown or 2. but you know he's going to lose you the game by turning over the football at some point. And if we know anything about UCF football, and a lot of the reasons why they lose some of these games, it's turnovers. So that's my quick Cam Fancher. They brought him in to be a depth piece, turnover machine, great depth piece, not a good starter piece.
I don't really know what to add to that, to be honest with you. It's like we stole notes or something here. Yeah, he's the most experienced guy in the room.
We should move on to the guy we'll probably spend the most time talking about.
I feel like I'm burying everybody right now. Like I've had a month off.
Well,
and I just came
let's
in
be
and
real. It's a two-man
everybody.
race. It's a two-man race. Let's talk Tayven Jackson.
He can. I need to say nice things. Okay.
He's really, a playmaker.
Yeah, he could be a playmaker, but I don't 23 interceptions in 3 years. I don't love that. FAU wasn't great this year. I guess we have to keep that in mind. But he also got sacked a lot. 68 times he's been sacked too. How much of that is on him? How much of that is on the offensive line? Usually it's a little bit of both. But I think like you said, I think he was just merely brought in as a depth piece because you have three quarterbacks who are all relatively inexperienced, and he has 3 years worth of starting tape out there. Is it Power 4 level tape?
Has not proven that he can do it in the Power 4.
No, I wouldn't say that, but let's just say if he's starting a game for UCF at some point, then something wrong has happened. I'll leave it at that.
A lot would have to go wrong, and I mean a lot would have to go wrong. Again, I kind of now feel bad. Good depth piece, and if he has to go out there and play a couple snaps, I feel confident that he can do that. Do I feel confident we'll win the game? Probably not. But you feel confident he can make some plays.
He's probably somewhere, and I'm not saying this because they're both lefties. Okay, he's probably somewhere in that Timmy McClain sort of tier of guy. And could Timmy McClain go out there and put some numbers up, and have some moments? Sure. But could Timmy McClain, he be trusted to be your quarterback for a full season at this? No. He's probably somewhere in that sort of thing, and I think he's just merely a depth piece.
Well said. Let's move on to the guy that most people have been waiting for us to talk about. They probably already skipped to this guy, Tayven Jackson. Now, I did a full episode on him. I still have my for and against, but I'm going to let you kind of go, Nick, because you haven't gotten a chance to talk about Tayven Jackson on this show. And I think it's when it happens, and we'll give our take, but when it happened, I think most people just assume this is quarterback one. This is the guy that Scott Frost wants. This is the guy that Mackenzie Milton wanted. And it's a guy that has high upside and high potential. So I'll give you the floor to kind of give your talk on Tayven Jackson.
Yeah, this is a two-man race, if you haven't figured that out yet. Tayven Jackson's the other piece of this puzzle. I wrote his notes down here. Class of 2022, went to Tennessee. He was a top 200 overall player, number 11 quarterback. So he came in with some hype there at Tennessee. Obviously, Mackenzie Milton was there. So there's a relationship already built in, and I'm sure that played a pretty big role, I'd have to say, in UCF being able to land him. Started 6 games, I believe it was, at Indiana in 2023. Not the greatest of results. 5 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, was sacked 8 times. Last year, they bring in Curtis Rourke, who was the MAC player of the year, I guess, the year prior. And Curtis Rourke got hurt in one of their games against, I think it was Nebraska, in that big blowout loss. Wait, was it Washington?
Oh, no, he got hurt in Nebraska. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, he got hurt in the Nebraska game, and that was the game where they won like 55-7 or something. And Tayven Jackson came in, and I went back and watched every throw that he made. And again, this is while they were leading, so you have to take that into context. While they were leading by a lot, so you have to take that into a little bit of context. But he was 7 of 8 for a touchdown. Probably the best throw that I've seen from watching him was in that game. It was near the red zone, and it was a 20-yard to the end zone on the left side. I'm sure you saw the same throw, Sean. beautiful, stood in the pocket, took a big hit while doing it, actually earned a shout out on College Game Day, I recall, from Pat McAfee for making that throw when they were sort of leading into that Washington game. And the only incompletion was a drop where he hit the receiver square in the chest, and if he catches it, he might be running for 6. So he was basically perfect in that game. And then he comes in against Washington. He only threw the ball 19 times. He threw an interception for sure, but they were able to win that football game. And then obviously he went back to the bench for Curtis Rourke, and the rest is history. Indiana goes to the college football playoff. But when I watch him, I sort of have it's like callbacks or flashbacks to last year when UCF landed KJ Jefferson, and it was like, this is the Gus prototype. This is the guy that Gus is going to make magic with. This is his Cam Newton, and all these crazy things that were said about KJ. I'm not going to say those things about Tayven Jackson and Scott Frost. But when I watch Tayven Jackson, I see I can't help but see glimpses of what a Scott Frost quarterback sort of looks like. He's got some throwing ability. He just hasn't really had enough playing time probably to show that off. And I think the running ability, the numbers aren't exactly going to jump out at you. But I don't know if you picked up on this when you watch him. I feel like if you gave that guy more opportunity in the read game and stuff like that, I actually think Tayven Jackson has a lot more potential than what he's shown so far. He seems like a very capable runner. Even when he's standing in the pocket, he seems pretty composed back there. Probably could work on some anticipation and stuff like that from what I was seeing. But I think there's some pretty intriguing tools there for Tayven Jackson, and the fact that UCF went out and got him, and I'm sure that there was probably a lot of teams that were trying to land him, and you already have that relationship with Mackenzie Milton built in, and just the fact that he looks like he's gonna fit seamlessly in a Scott Frost offense. Yeah, if anybody wants to say this is quarterback 1 right now, I can't disagree with you on that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to Tayven Jackson, the player. Obviously started at Tennessee, didn't play, was a high recruit in that 2022 class, I think.
Yeah, who was Tennessee's quarterback this year? I think it was Hendon Hooker too.
Yeah. Now Mackenzie came after he left, so I don't know if they ever crossed paths. Maybe they talked at some point, but Mackenzie I think started in May and he transferred in January. But clearly there had to have been something, given, they went after him. Here's my thing. I think you look at that 2023 season and it's not great. It's not. You look at, even if you go back and watch the tape, very unpolished. I think it was the clear, sometimes top end players go to schools and they get thrown into the fire when they're not ready. And I talked about that on the Tayven Jackson pod, where it seemed like Tayven Jackson went back home to Indiana after 1 year at Tennessee, gets the starting role, almost like he was appointed it, and he maybe wasn't ready for it. And I think this last year at Indiana, having to sit, learn, new coaching staff, I think Cignetti was huge in the development and this new coaching staff. And
I was going to mention Tino Sunseri, who I think very highly of as a play caller, was their OC, and now he's at UCLA. And he was the quarterback coach, I believe, too. From what I was reading, there were a lot of people who said, even though he didn't get the same playing time this past year that he got in 2023, they saw noticeable strides out of Tayven Jackson when he got a chance to work with Cignetti and Tino Sunseri. But continue.
No, and I think that's honestly what one of my fours was the potential's through the roof, and he did get that year. He looks back, again, the 2023 season was not great. It was not by any stretch of the imagination. But when you take a player that you throw him in too quick to the fire, and then you take a step back and sit and learn, and with a good Indiana football team this past season, with a good coaching staff, a competent coaching staff, I think it gives players like that not a realization, but time to develop.
Keep in mind, 4 offensive coordinators and 4 quarterback coaches in 2 years is what he's had. He hasn't really had stability. that's important to every quarterback, especially at this level. Like, there are guys in the pros, of course, that can make it work no matter what because it's the best of the best. But in college, I think stability matters a lot, Sean. And he's had anything but stability. But like I said, I think we've seen from a lot of the guys who are plugged in at Indiana, they saw noticeable strides in him. And obviously, Curt Cignetti had nothing but good things to say about him. So you take a flyer on him. And you hope that potential can work out. And again, I'm sure he didn't come cheap, Sean. Let's also put that out there.
Yeah, he did not. But none of the top quarterbacks in the portal come cheap anymore. So yeah, my 4 was one of the top quarterbacks in the portal. He was not top 5 or anything. He definitely the top 20. And I think in terms of potential, young, he was definitely up there. Potential through the roof and getting that year to sit. And then another one was Scott Frost, handpicked. I mean, him and Mackenzie Milton wanted Tayven Jackson. They viewed him as the guy for their offense. My against was not great in 2023 when he got that chance. I kind of can put that again in the 4 category, though, as maybe he wasn't ready and he wasn't developed enough to start. Accuracy questions. In the game against Washington and again in Nebraska, you saw that his accuracy had improved from 2023 to 2024. But there are some questions about how accurate he can be, especially with the deep throws. So I think working with Scott Frost and Mackenzie Milton with all these quarterbacks can help that. But that is and against is those questions if he can get that better. And then how much better, Nick, did he get in this past year? I think you won't know until you give him that starting role if he is the starter. How much better did he get in that last year? Because if you get 2023 Tayven Jackson, which I don't think you will. I think that last year, like we said, when he got the opportunities to play, he showed a lot of strides. But how much better did this last year make him? Or is going to be the big question of if you're getting 2023 Tayven Jackson, probably not going to be that great.
Well, I mean, there's also a couple things that I like about him, in this sort of like this era where, and I don't blame anybody for doing it necessarily. Like, it is what it is, where you can basically transfer however many times you want and go and please. Or I can't even say the damn thing. My goodness, just forget that. Go as you please, I guess is what I was trying to say. Whatever. Tayven Jackson, even at the end of the season when the portal opened, like I appreciate the fact that he stuck around for the playoff. It's a little thing, but I appreciate that he stuck around until IU's season ended, and then he entered the portal like he did it. What I would call the right way, or what we like to say is the right way. Like, he did that. So I like that out of him. And also keep in mind, Indiana could not afford a misstep all year long. Even when they lost to Ohio State, you still had people saying, okay, the bloom is off the rose now. Indiana just lost a football game. Are we really going to throw them into the playoff? Like, to me, I felt like, and this was obviously before they got to the Ohio State game, but the margin of error for Indiana was pretty small all year long. If they had lost 2 games, are they in the college football playoff? The answer is no. So here's Indiana having the best season that they've had. And Tayven Jackson, it's your time, bud. College game days here. At that moment, it's probably like the most important game in Indiana football in a long, long time. And he has to come in and, yeah, did he make some mistakes? Sure. But he still was able to go out there and perform well enough, and he made some good throws and put some solid tape out there, and he won the game. And I think that's pretty telling. Like, that's a pressurized situation that he was thrown into. Like, you could say, oh, he only started the one game. Yeah, well, it was pretty damn important. It was a pretty damn important game. And he was able to do enough to get the win. And I remember after the game, there were some of his teammates that were saying, like, yeah, if he starts against Michigan State, we're confident. If he starts in the national championship game, we're confident. That's some pretty high praise that there were from those Indiana players. And also, he was able to sit behind a pretty experienced quarterback in Curtis Rourke. So I'm sure you learned something from him. We already mentioned that he was around good coaches. So yeah, I think there's some reasonable excitement that I think he brings to the program.
For sure. Well, let's make the predictions. I'll let you start. I think we both said this is a 2 quarterback race. I'll give you the floor. Say who you think quarterback 1 is, and you can say whatever you want about any of the quarterbacks for the upcoming season.
Yeah, it's a 2-man race, and for right now, I'm gonna give the nod that I think it's gonna be Tayven. I think it's gonna be Tayven. I mean, they went out there and they picked him up after they had already gotten Cam from FAU, which made it basically a 3 quarterback room sort of thing for now. I'll be interested to see if it even stays the way it is, because again, we have the second portal window that's going to open up in the spring. So like, does a guy like Jacurri enter the portal then, or whatever? We'll see what happens. I probably have my doubts that it's going to stay at 4, but right now I'm giving the nod to Tayven, because clearly, like I said, I think they're probably paying him a pretty good chunk to be here at UCF, and for all the reasons we literally just stated. I think he's the best man for the job, but I'm not giving it to anybody. Like, I'm not, like, even though I say I think it's going to be him, again, I'm not anointing him that guy yet. I think it's him and Dylan, and I let these 2 guys battle it out. I see who fits this offense better. I see who takes to it, relationship with the receivers, offensive line, running backs, all that kind of stuff, and I go from there. But I think definitively we can say it's a 2-man race.
Yep, I agree. I've mentioned it a couple times that you don't need to worry like you maybe did about Gus when it comes to, let's call it like it is. Tayven Jackson's making the most money probably on the team. That's just a fact. He's the quarterback. He was a high-end transfer, high-end recruit coming out of high school. But you don't need to worry if he goes into camp and is not the best player. If Dylan Rizk goes and beats him out, if you're a Dylan Rizk fan and you want Dylan Rizk to start, I would not have any worry that Scott Frost is going to trot out Tayven Jackson if he doesn't ultimately win that job. Do I think that Tayven Jackson is the best player in that quarterback room? Yes, I do think he's got the highest potential, highest ceiling, and probably the best player. But if Dylan Rizk goes out there and Tayven Jackson is 2023 Tayven Jackson through spring, and Scott Frost, and I don't think this will be decided in the spring. Now, granted, if Tayven Jackson goes out in spring and lights it up, I don't think Jacurri leaves. I think Dylan leaves. And then I think Dylan Rizk is staying because he thinks he has a really good shot at quarterback 1. I think if he doesn't get quarterback 1, or if Scott Frost tells him in the spring, hey, Tayven most likely in the fall is gonna be the starter, then I think you see Dylan leave in the spring window. I think Jacurri plays regardless. I think Scott Frost and the staff know how dangerous he can be. They'll see it. I think he's going to have a lot of packages on game days just for him to kind of show what he can do. Kind of a crazy thing. I'd put him at running back. Straight up. I would use him as a big-bodied back in a lot of goal line situations. Obviously, I don't think he's a quarterback, but I would use him in a lot of different running situations. When he comes in the game, he's not going to throw. So I think Jacurri Brown gets play regardless. And I like Dylan. I really do. I like him as a kid. I like him as a player. I think in the right situation, I think he can be deadly. But I do think he needs some development. And I think Tayven Jackson might just have the upper hand at this point, which would then kind of force
Tayven Jackson has the upside. He's the upside play, whereas with Dylan, you're sort of like, again, you're questioning what the ceiling is. It feels like Tayven Jackson hasn't hit the ceiling. We're questioning if Dylan has already hit his.
Which is crazy to say for a redshirt sophomore or something, but it is a question that is valid.
Regardless, I think Dylan's already overachieved.
Oh,
I think he's already overachieved.
Yeah,
I don't think, I know damn sure that coaching staff never thought, and probably us too, we're guilty of it. I think all of us are. I never thought Dylan Rizk was going to start a game for UCF. No way. And he delivered the best quarterback performance that we saw in a UCF uniform, maybe over the last 3 years.
Okay. All right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
You think a UCF quarterback played better in the last 3 years than what he played?
There's probably some John Rice games that I need to go back and look at. But I'm
That's true.
Sure.
John Rice's college career has aged tremendously well for me. After what we watched last year,
aged us a lot in our football minds. All right, guys, let us know what you think. Who do you want to be QB1? Who do you think's going to be QB1? Two very different questions, two very big questions for the Knights. Like I said, we're going to be doing this for every position group on Tuesdays and Fridays. So this is the first one. You can expect running backs on Tuesday, and then we'll go from there up until spring practicing start. So good for you. We all get 2 episodes a week. Because there's a lot of players. Oh, and we'll have a staff episode probably at the end of it. So I know some people were asking about staff updates and everything like that. There's still people getting added to the staff. So once that all kind of gets announced, I'm assuming it'll be kind of once we're at the end of this portion, we will kind of do a whole staff video. And again, if news breaks or there's other stuff, that will be included in some of these episodes. But for right now, we're just going through the depth chart. Nick, any final thoughts on this one?
I'm glad to be back. I hope that the little listeners out there missed me a little bit. I hope they were bored hearing just you.
I'm bored of hearing myself sometimes, so I'm glad you're back too.
And they're happy to have the band back together. I already, even though the season sucked and it was what it was, I already miss it already. And
I don't know if I'm there yet.
Even like the off season fun with the portal and all the movement and everything that gets really crazy. It's all starting to wind down, and I feel that we're about to hit sort of these dry months until we get back to springtime. So I miss it.
I don't miss UCF football from last season. I'm excited.
I say that. Whereas in that Utah game, we were sitting in the press box, and I wanted to do anything else but watch UCF play football that night.
That's why. Listen, I'm all for watching UCF football. I'm all for watching it, and I'm excited to see if Gus Malzahn was. I don't want to just keep burying Gus Malzahn now, but if Gus Malzahn was the head coach this season, this would be bleak. I mean, this would be a rough 9 months of content. But with Scott Frost coming in, it's a lot more enjoyable, actually. A lot more enjoyable. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe. Like I said, a lot of content in January that you usually don't get, but we just like to get all this out. And honestly, it's good homework for us because we're going to have to know all these people, and we probably don't know half of them yet. So homework is going to be extensive over the next couple weeks.
Remember, I have to put the disclaimer out there. If in 8 months' time, anything that we said today turns out to not happen, then I reserve the right to change my opinion at any time.
Yep.
Reserve the right to change my opinion at any time, and I didn't say it.
That's for all these. We're not using AI, but we'll blame it on it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Charge on Bet Online. We will see you next week.